Hail, Internet! It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Honor Among Thieves. The movie that just came out in theaters this weekend. Let me set this up a little bit. Back in the day, I wrote movie reviews for a newspaper in Kansas City. I also had a series of sarcastic reviews under the name Movie Snob. Probably would have turned that into a YouTube channel if YouTube existed back then. Anyway, I did a Movie Snob review of Dungeons and Dragons, the movie that came out in the year 2000. This is how my review began.
Okay.
Movie Snob's formative years were spent huddled behind a Dungeon Master screen, rolling dice and eating Cheetos. Hence, Movie Snob comprises the perfect target audience for Dungeons and Dragons, former D&D geeks who love movies. So, as the one person in the universe for whom this movie was intended, let Movie Snob be the first to say, horrible! This has got to be the worst film of the year, hands down. Hell, even an army of Gith Yankee, Fiend Folio, page 39, couldn't save this picture. I'll add that Jeremy Irons played the villain in that movie. Academy Award winner Jeremy Irons.
Sure.
There is no worse existing Jeremy Irons performance than the one he gives as Profion in the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
So you're saying that if he had, put a pillow over this movie and killed it in its sleep, that you would have been fine with it?
Yep, yes.
He's
Put
like,
it out of his misery,
don't
Jeremy.
prosecute him.
So we flash forward 23 years. An entire generation has been born since then. And so I think it's time to try again.
Sure.
So, does Honor Among Thieves work as a film? I say it does.
Aha!
Does it roll a 20? No, it doesn't. But probably rolls a solid 15,
okay,
which is a hit. That's it. Especially if you got a +2 weapon, you're going to hit with a 15. I'll add that my wife Jackie enjoyed the film having no background at all in D&D.
Wow, yes, she wouldn't have gotten any of those references. Like, why am I rolling something? What the?
Right, exactly. What's the point of this rolling? All right, anyway, so Paul.
Yes.
Before we launch into specifics, what did you think of Honor Among Thieves?
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I had done my bit of, Dungeons and Dragons in high school there, so I wasn't completely out of it. Although I've heard the makers of the movie talk about the ways in which some of the action happens, things not working out and wanting to have other plans and everything. And in that way, you'd really have to sort of use your imagination to imagine, the connection between game playing, the world that it creates and the abilities that everybody has. That's, equivalent to the game, but and it's probably, is just fine that you don't have, the aspect that existed in Jumanji.
Oh, I see what you mean. In other words, they're referencing the game as though they're in it and playing it. Right. I see what you're saying. But yeah, no, they didn't do that. They didn't take that route.
That's right.
Which
So
I agree. It's
fine.
better for storytelling, frankly. I agree that. Yeah.
And even though there was an aspect of it that you could say is modern humor, I don't think it cheapened the expression of the world. It's just some things, some ideas and phrases and the style of humor that's modern, but
which is also though a factor of an aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, because it's people in modern context playing, and so you do.
That's true.
Your characters do tend to say modern-based things in D&D.
Yes.
So that's not even that out of place. Yeah, and the humor, I'll just say that right off, that's one of the strengths of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost, it's not quite a comedy, like, I wouldn't phrase it as just a comedy, but it's...
Well, it's certainly
almost just a
certainly
comedy.
The standard action movie of this time, which... has strong comedy in it.
I'll just throw out some of the scenes that I thought were particularly funny. There's a bit of Monty Python in the Holy Grail in this, which, if you're gonna borrow from the best, baby.
Sure.
But anyway, but like, for instance, raising corpse after corpse to ask them these 5 questions.
Yes.
and you're like, oh wait, that stop answering? I'm not asking that question. That was a fun bit, and they are actually learning bits of information from each one, which is kind of fun. And then that leads to the mid-credit sequence where they only ask 4 questions to one, and that we get this like loophole in the spell. Oh, well, if you don't ask the 5th question, you functionally made this guy immortal. Even in the opening, which I thought it was a pretty fun way to present exposition. Right, you're gonna need to do exposition in some way. So in this way, they had Chris Pine. He's up for parole, essentially absolution. I think they called it. But so he's, in order to like stall, he's trying to just give his backstory while he waits for this one particular adjudicator to show up, Jarnathan.
Yes.
And we find out the reason he was waiting is because Jarnathan has wings, and so he's like, well, Jarnathan won't want to die, so if I jump out of a window with him, he won't die, neither will I. Yeah. So, but that bit where he's just like, has Jarnathan arrived? No. Anyway, back in the day, that was fun. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty fun, pretty good thing. I love this it's a short gag, but it worked. Hugh Grant.
Yes.
He's our villain.
Yes.
One of the villains.
Yes.
He's much better than Jeremy Irons in this. I'll just say that. You're no Hugh Grant, Jeremy Irons. There, I said it. But anyway, so Hugh Grant, he's complaining about how hot his tea is. And so he asks his wizard accomplice to be like, could you cool this down?
Yes.
And she puts her finger in it and cools it down. He's like, I didn't realize you were gonna put your finger in it. Okay, well, we'll just leave that aside. But anyway, it was a fun little gag as well. Yes. We had a paladin character was introduced. And as the character leaves, and it's a fun because paladins in the game are lawful good. They are very straight and narrow, tend to be. Wow. And so when they're like, oh, look how he walks in that straight line. Yeah. And then they're watching him walk away, and they're like, oh, wait, there's a stone. Is he going to walk around it? Nope, he's going to walk right. He just steps over the stone. And it's a fun bit. Yes. It works with the character. It was great. So there was a lot of good stuff with that. And I'm going to talk about the action scenes in a second, but one of the action scenes was funny as well, which was the overweight dragon. There's like, oh my God, there's this dragon, but it's too big to fly, and it has to like crawl after them essentially. Yes, and it was a fun bit. It was a fun bit. Okay. So I give it credit. Yes,
there were several comedic beats that amused me, but I liked all the character bits. It's like clearly. Michelle Rodriguez's character, Holga, was not the smartest tool in the shed. She was clearly, her talents lie in fighting.
She's a barbarian.
But, I still respected her as a character, even though, she wasn't all that smart. She was clearly, faithful, and, she cared about the people that mattered to her. And so they really did a good job of setting up her character. And you should have watched the movie and not be afraid to hear this, because spoilers, we should have said that. But it had resonance at the end when but it made sense for the story where what is it, Edgin? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Edgin. Chris Pine's bard character.
Yeah, he, made the right sacrifice, I think.
So, I mean, we're spoiling everything. So, he's got this. The whole point of his conflict essentially was, hey, my wife died. I'd like to bring her back. Oh, I've been told there's this magic item that'll bring her back. He goes to get the item. Hijinks ensue. Well, he finally acquires the item. It's a one-use only item. Well, in the process of getting that item, Holga is killed off, and so he uses the item to save her instead of his long dead wife. Yes. And it's a very touching moment, and there's some loss to that, because he does it. He is saying goodbye to his wife. So anyway,
and I think they put a fine point on it by Edgin saying that really it was for him to get his wife back, not so much to get his daughter's mother back, because she had no memory of the mother.
Right,
and so point. Really, for her, Holga was her mother.
I like that line actually, where he's like, I said I was doing this for your mom, and I was doing it for my wife, and that was an interesting way of phrasing it because it's the same person, but he's explaining how it's different reasons, which I liked.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, what we got in D&D terms here, we've got our party of adventurers. You've got a bard, a barbarian, a sorcerer, and a druid. Again, basically going up against a rogue and a wizard. That's in your D&D context. That's your.
I feel like they could have put more of a point on that, even though you could suggest that in the world there, maybe people wouldn't be referring to each other that way. I had some, knowledge of paladins and sorcerers and things like that. But the fact that they weren't throwing those terms around made me not think about it as I was watching it.
Right, I agree. That was actually one of the problems I had with the 2000 movie. Was they were going around. Not only were they naming their classes, but they were calling themselves thieves. And you're like, I don't think that's a good thief. Is the one that announces publicly that he's a thief. Like, okay, great.
So, so you're saying maybe they went too far in the other direction.
I'll say this: like with any D&D group. The individual party members are more or less judged by how well they do in combat. I mean, that's kind of your starting point for, do I like this character or not? Are they a tank, a healer, what they call a bubbler, a glass cannon? So anyway, if I was looking at this group as like NPCs that I would choose from, the person I would replace first,
yes,
Chris Pine. Bards are tricky characters anyway in D&D terms. They're powerful at higher levels, but not so much at lower levels.
Okay.
But their main useful attribute, I think across the board, is in combat, is to cast essentially beneficial spells through their music.
Okay.
They can buff people up and all the stuff through their music. I mean, Chris Pine hits people with his lute. That's what he does. It's like he's a bard who thinks he's a fighter. So I'd be like, all right, you're out of the group, son. Next. Yeah, Chris Pine, not the greatest bard, but
he was the one who was mostly coming up with the plans, though.
Right, he was the plan. He's the organizer. I'm just saying in terms of like an actual D&D game, when you're basing those characters and your group and your group dynamic on how well they do in a fight. And I'm not sure that he did that well in the moment in fights. He would like swing his lute at things.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's not going to do a ton of damage to the thing. It's going to do a lot of damage to the lute. But yeah, no, his character was great. I thought Chris Pine really delivered a convincing performance.
Yeah, that was sufficiently different than James Kirk.
Yes, it was.
James Kirk, much better fighter.
Agreed. You would want, if you were gonna pick in D&D terms, you'd want James Kirk in the group as a fight, to fight for you, as opposed to Chris Pine's edging character for sure. There were some fun D&D tropes in here as well. I think like the fact that there's this series of subquests that are needed to do so it's like you need to raise the dead, to ask them questions, to find the helm, to break the sport warding spell, to get the tablet, to bring back the... So it's like that's a very conventional, D&D campaign style thing, which kudos. They're on brand. Another kind of constant trope is you've got this powerful NPC, in this case the paladin, that helps out for one fight, then leaves, even though they seem much more capable of completing the mission. And they even mention it, like, well, you could stay because you seem like you're pretty... It's like, no, I must be away. That's very on brand. Also, the figuring out the solutions to the various traps and puzzles, that's on brand as well, where our paladin character is just kind of listing off, first you do this, that was another good humor bit. This masonry seems a bit unsound. So if you're playing like an online like RPG, a lot of times you figure out traps by falling into the trap, then going back to your previous save, going forward, go back to the previous save. So, to do it in real time, you just break the bridge from the first time and you just go through it. There are some excellent references and Easter eggs and such for the D&D connoisseur. Most of this actually story took place in Neverwinter, which I actually played. I played Neverwinter online for a couple of years, and the city of Neverwinter looks very similar to the movie. I mean, you can actually look like, oh wow, there's a thing. So they did their homework at like making it look like what people might imagine it to look like. They do references to like Faerun, the Sword Coast, Baldur's Gate, which is a great game series. Baldur's Gate 3 coming out later this year. Icewind Dale, the Underdark, Mordenkainen, Element, I mean, all kinds of Displacer Beasts. And my favorite thing of all, my favorite reference of all was they did a live action version of the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon characters. Like, so this is back again from the 80s. Like Hank, Eric, all those guys. At the very end, where they're going, not the very end. They're going through the maze.
Oh yes.
And then it's the group that's in the cage that
is
they're
that
going to
right?
release.
Oh wow.
That group it's a live action version of the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which is awesome. Great. And just to add some nerd cred, a couple of months ago, I posted a highlight video of my buddy Theron, who's done some work on the channel, and I playing Icewind Dale 2 as the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Okay.
We used their sound files and everything. So anyway, but I'll put a link to that in the description. But yeah. So that was an awesome callback to be like, they didn't name them. You just, if you knew, you knew. You're like, that's Eric. Anyway, that was pretty fun.
Okay.
So that all was great. So they threw in a lot of the trappings of D&D. But yeah, they had a fairly conventional but compelling story. And it was fun to watch. The action pieces. Like the bit where our druid is escaping from the castle, shape-changing, great scene.
Yes.
Shape-changing into various creatures just to try to escape.
That was great. I want to say that I think the magic in this is better than, I'd say, the Doctor Strange movies. I mean, I really like the magic battles and the one
staff of teleportation was really cool.
Right. But I think like a key is, not just a bolt of magic flowing at somebody, but changing something around someone to have them interact with, and then fight that way. It was, it was rather good, I thought.
And I think there was a suggestion. I don't know if this is, in fact, this is what I got out of it. When our sorcerer, I think his name is Simon. Our sorcerer is casting spells. He's got this thing on his belt that looks like a dial. It's like he dials the thing and then he pulls it. And I'm wondering if that was their version, their interpretation of like, well, I want to get an 8th level spell, so I'll crank it up to level 8.
Interesting.
I mean, that's anyway. If so, it worked because I was like, oh, that's a fun way to interpret that.
But I liked Holga and her ex, played by. What was it?
Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper, yeah. So
Rocket Raccoon makes an appearance.
Yeah.
Agreed. That was a fun scene where, it worked. It was this little scene of domesticity in this.
Yeah, the emotion between them was real, and their situation, thankfully, was not played for cliche. There was really something lost in their relationship.
Their comedy was baked into just the visuals, but then they treated the actual emotion of the scene with some reality to it, which was great.
Yeah. Care and integrity.
Yeah. So this was actually written by a couple of folks, but one of the guys.
The two of the guys had done, and I should have realized that the guys who did Game Night would be able to make because that, I think perhaps I walked into that one thinking, what's this going to be like? And that's another one that had good comedy, but also great character work. So
one of those guys is John Francis Daly.
Yeah, that's actually he wasn't. I don't know if he's connected to Game Night, but of course he was in the original Freaks and Geeks.
Right, but he was also the Bones series.
Yes, he did that. Yes, but before that,
he was a character in that. He was Dr. Sweets.
Yes.
So anyway, John Francis Daly.
Yes.
Is showing some chops here. So good on you. good sir.
Yes.
He's also actually from nearby Wheeling, Illinois.
Okay.
So, as we mentioned, this film's probably not going to win any awards, but it is very good. It is an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, a fantasy adventure film that did win some awards.
Yeah.
A little film called Return of the King.
Oh, okay.
I convinced Paul to join me in seeing the 4+ hour extended edition of Return of the King. It's going to hit theaters.
Suspiciously, before he asked me, his hand went down to this dial that was at his hip.
Crank it up to 9th level, baby. So just in case you out there haven't heard of this, for the 20th year anniversary of Return of the King, they're putting it out in theaters on a limited basis, April 13th and 19th. So if you want to go see it in the big screen, and it's the first time it's ever shown the extended edition in the theaters. So yes, Paul and I are gonna go. Maybe we'll even do like a out of the theater reaction. I think this movie's gonna win some awards, Paul. I don't know about you, but anyway. So it's kind of an interesting time for it to come out because that'll be right as this movie's kind of trailing out of the theaters. But if like people who were like watching Dungeons and Dragons might be inspired to go see a fantasy epic that's inspired much of what Dungeons and Dragons is. Certainly the works of J.R. Tolkien. So that's also coming out in April. It's a Dork Lord special April. Based on the fact that I disliked that 2000 movie so much, I didn't have high hopes for this movie. Yet proved me wrong. They proved me wrong. I really enjoyed it. So tip of the cap to Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it, good sir.
No problem.
And we'll talk to everybody next time. Bye.
Bye.